that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I would like to call today's regular council meeting to order. Council, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing nothing from council administration, are there any changes?
There is nothing from administration.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move.
Sorry, 1 second.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for October 3rd, 2023, please.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion from council. Just I'm having trouble getting signed in, so we'll just do this vote manually if that's okay. Okay, council, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And so that brings us to council minutes for adoption. Council, any motions? Council? Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we adopt the regular council meeting for September 19th, 2023, and the committee of the whole meeting for September 25th, 2023.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor, is there any comments or discussion? Seeing nothing from council, we'll call that to question then. All those in favor? And that's also carried unanimously. That brings us to our citizens minute with council. Are there any citizens present here today who would like to address council? Okay, seeing no one in person, is there anyone via Zoom?
No, there is not.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us then to our first delegation and presentation today. Item 5.1, West Yellowhead Trail Society, presented by Bernie Kreiner. Mr. Kreiner.
Thank you. And with me here today is another member of our 8-member board, Mark Story. And thank you for giving us the chance to speak again about our project. This is basically an exciting opportunity to enhance the region for tourism and active living. And we'll cover things, some of which you've heard before, but give you an update as to where we're at this point in time. So our project, this is a report card that we issued in July for our stakeholders and some of our members. And so I'll cover that first. The board's been busy over the last 7 months setting solid governance formats and getting our application into the province and finishing our Aboriginal and Indigenous engagement requirements, which was done in July. We actually formalized a vision and a mission for this project, and I think it's a pretty exciting project. And I've got a great amount of confidence that we've got the talent on our board, plus some of the folks that we've hired now to get this project to come to fruition. The vision is to create an accessible, unforgettable Canadian Northern Rockies trail experience that feeds your soul. It's located between Hinton and the Jasper Park east boundary. Only the views will leave you breathless, with beckoning vistas, pristine lakes, and boreal forests. Your adventure is calling. And the mission statement is that this trail will enable outdoor enthusiasts of all ages and abilities to experience Alberta's culture and wild nature on a unique paved, non-motorized trail. We've set our core values and we're living them. What we've developed is basically 6 portfolios that have each of us as members of the board working in one portfolio and supporting another to advance the project, from marketing, communications, resourcing, trail design, to the operations, maintenance, and ownership issues that have to be sorted out on something as big as this. So we've hired actually now 3 parties. Wolverine Integrated has been hired to get the project to approval stage with provincial and other parties. McElhaney was doing all of the mapping and drawing for us. And we've now hired a gentleman out of Canmore whose job it is to finish design and get to construction ready stage. Now we're in that awkward stage where we don't have approved blueprint in the sense of the provincial government. But certainly West Fraser and others have given us their blessing as to where we're headed with this layout, design, and alignment. What you may not remember is that we've actually made this a two-phase project at this point, 23 kilometers in phase one, another 7 in phase 2. At the request of the Yellowhead County, we've chosen to stop phase 1 at Wild Horse Kinky because there's some matters that are happening to the west in the overland zone. We've had good strategic partnerships with a large number of folks. And we're moving things forward. That's a pretty exciting place to be after feeling like we were spinning our wheels in some of the early going. So in June or May, we submitted to the government of Alberta our entire package, went through the Aboriginal land acknowledgement piece, and we got briefing letters to the ministries after the election. We've actually had a very favorable response from tourism and recreation, or forestry and parks and tourism ministers at this point in terms of support. So we're now working with their administrations to advance the fact that the ministers have said this is a project they want to see us bring alive. We've been doing, we've got a subcommittee that's now been formed for fundraising, and we're still obviously open to other volunteers. We have interviewed someone who can actually do grant writing for us as well. So that'll be a further project as we move into the fourth quarter of this year. So where are we at? Continued trail preparation, planning activities, and communication, and beginning the fundraising. And then government approvals with construction planning through this fall, winter. Construction planning and groundbreaking realistically probably this September of this coming year. You had a number of questions that we were to answer. So our successes, an experienced and motivated board, a clear strategy map, submission to the government's already in place. We've got strong membership support and corporate commitments in various ways, and we haven't really went hard at the corporate commitments at this point. And our relationship with both West Fraser and the town, and want to thank Deb Buke for her direct involvement with us. She's been very helpful in navigating things for us as well. Current challenges, getting the government approvals, which we don't think is a challenge. It's just a bureaucratic process. Trail ownership. There's the Trails Act, which is not yet defined its regulations. So there's some uncertainties that we're working through. And that affects the operations and maintenance and ongoing solution for that. And fundraising, of course, there's always not enough money for what you want to get done. Town's funding to date has been 50,000 in each of the first 2 years, which was designated for the planning design work. And our finances as of June 30th for this past fiscal year is a revenue of 127,000 and expenses of only 48,888. But we've now got more money going out monthly as we go deal with approval work and design consultants. And shortly, we'll also be dealing with fundraising consultants. The project and budget for next year is to finalize the design and approvals, and that includes municipal approvals as well. Get the fundraising in place and be ready for September 2024 start. The request of the town is for $100,000 in the 2024 and 2025 years. There's a real benefit in getting municipal commitments in advance because it leverages other grants, but it also, we're trying to have our project being project ready before we go after certain grants, because that's what many grants are looking for these days. You can't ask for grants for ideas. It's got to be almost construction ready. We thank you for your continuing of tax receipting, which I think we've flowed about $15,000 through that system already. And to stay at the table when we work out ownership, operations, and maintenance matters. We don't quite know where that's going to land yet. We are open to your questions.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kreiner. Councillor, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Magoon.
Yes, again, thanks for that. I just want to start by saying I'm always excited when you guys present. This is a project that I'm very passionate about. I can't wait to see it come to fruition. Last Christmas, when we sat down with the county for a Christmas dinner, this was a point of conversation with several of the councillors that were within earshot of a number of us. And really, I would like to thank my fellow councillors because I think there was a lot of advocacy going on. It was a good avenue to have that elevator conversation and say, hey, look, where do you stand? What's your take on where the county is at with this process? And I mean, are we good there? Do you feel like you need more support in terms of any reaching out on the town's behalf to continue to advocate for this? Or with that phase one approach that you had just mentioned, is that sort of taken care of?
No, the county is not as far advanced on this project as the town is in terms of support. The challenge has been the county's been rather busy over 4 months with fires, etc. And we had hoped that they would have an amendment to their trails plan before the end of summer, which they have not been able to achieve, which was step one with them. So we're still pushing through those processes with them. I think one of the challenges early on for the county was political support when we were actually affecting some of the land interests out there, but I think we've cleared those matters. So hopefully now there should be less resistance to making this thing happen. So if we need support, we'll let you know.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you speak again to the grants?
Sorry, to the grants that we're
to the
pursuing.
grants, what needs to be in place for application to a grant to become successful?
Well, a number of the grants these days are wanting to be what I'll call project ready. It's not like you can fund for a design or an idea without it being ready to construct, as if because it's about economic development and making sure that money is going in the ground and jobs are being created. And that's one of the biggest things. Obviously, the other thing is matching. So we took an early cut to getting some letters of commitment from businesses, including in-kind contributions, in order to show matching support so that we can go after the big money, having evidence of our matching.
There's been a number of grant opportunities that have come out in the last year that we've seen where they want shovel-ready projects. So basically everything, all the approvals are in place. And even like some of the federal grants have come out that sort of a specific requirement. But I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but they want to see projects a lot farther along before they start putting money.
I do have two more questions, sir.
Go ahead.
So you were talking about phase one, phase two. Phase one would go to Kinky.
Walter's Kinky, yes.
Okay. And you also mentioned that the ministries, I think you showed 4 or 5 of them, that they are all in support of this project.
Well, we've received 2 formal letters back from ministers of the 4 or 5 we've written.
Okay.
Real excitement and energy for this project.
I just have to say to you, I have my bike. I am ready for this path. Thank you very much.
Did you have another question,
No,
Councillor?
sir, I'm fine.
Good. Okay. Council, is there anything further? Okay, seeing nothing additional from council, just like to thank you for your time and coming to present to us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to our second delegation for today, item 5.2, Community Futures West Yellowhead, presented by Nancy Robbins. Oh, Nancy.
Am I? Oh, there I am.
Yep, there you are.
Actually on. Just a few announcements I want to make sure that you're aware of. We're doing our Hinton Business Walk next week, October 10th. If any councillor would like to join us, please let me know. We'd love to have you come. We'll feed you lunch. I know. And we're hosting a women's entrepreneurship event on October 19th here in Hinton. So if you would like to come, as my son reminds me, I don't assume people's gender, so anyone is welcome. So I don't assume anyone's gender, so everybody is welcome to join us for our women's entrepreneurship event. Community Futures West Yellowhead is here today to request a funding request from all our municipalities in the total amount of $10,000 each. We are a nonprofit organization. We're funded by Prairies Can, and we're dedicated to building an economic diverse future for our communities in the West Yellowhead region. We are offering programs for small businesses and entrepreneurs that help people start, grow, expand, franchise, and sell their businesses. We offer training and coaching, financing program, network events, and loans that are for businesses and startups. Our core business programming is covered by our funding from the federal government, and that includes coaching, training, our loan program, and our economic development activities. However, we're finding that our core funding is not meeting our needs. We haven't had a funding increase in 17 years from the Government of Canada. We do not foresee an increase anytime in the near future. We have a contract now until the end of 2025. And I think that we've proven ourselves in the pandemic that we really are here to support businesses and our demands are growing. So anytime that we offer anything that you see in the community, we try to find funding sources outside of our core programming. So Lemonade Day, our Leadership West Yellowhead program, we're starting in January. Our previous Smart Start program, anytime we do business walks, any business retention activities, anything that we do that is not part of our core services, we look for funding for elsewhere. So if you're wondering why an organization that's funded by the Government of Canada comes to its municipalities, that's mainly why. We are finding we're stretched thinner and thinner, and that we need the support financially from our municipalities. I'm happy to answer any programming questions that you have today. I think we've proven ourselves as an organization that meets the needs of the town of Hinton, and that we work well here with our businesses, and we have a great reputation. So we're just asking for your support on that.
Right. Thank you very much, Ms. Robbins. Council, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Nancy, for coming forward and presenting to us today. I don't have any questions. I just want to say thanks. I think you guys offer it's an invaluable service to the community. And in terms for, like bang for the buck when it comes to economic development and how it benefits local business, that's a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll pass that along to the staff.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, thanks, Nancy.
Sure.
So all of the programs, the $10,000 for Appendix 1,
Yes.
no Lemonade Days is happening.
Mhm.
Are these existing or pre-existing, or are they some of them new initiatives?
Well, Lemonade Day is, well, it's a given. It's going to happen. Can't say no to the kids.
Mhm.
Our Leadership West Yellowhead program, if you're familiar with it, we ran from 2009 to 2012 is how I started with Community Futures is that program. We've really have seen the need for more training for people to up their skills. And so we're rebooting it in January. The more funding we get for that program, the higher quality of the programming curriculum. So it's kind of old, but yet new again. Small Business Week, we want to ramp up Small Business Week. Right now, we are doing a small event in each of our communities that we serve, but I think we really like to ramp it up. We see a real gap in that celebration of leadership and entrepreneurship, and that we want to increase that more in our communities. The events that we hold for newcomers, women, LGBTQ, and Indigenous peoples is going to be new. It is something that we've often tried to do through our core programming, but we feel that these are really an underserved population and we need to pay more attention. And we need to start really embracing diversity in our communities, especially in rural Alberta. Mm-hmm. And our business retention expansion activities, we really do that anyway. We just want to up our game and be more formal about it, be able to present reports to council, be able to be more strategic in what we're doing with our businesses and really get some solid information back that we can build strategies about. So it's old, but yet it's new, but yet it's old again. Yeah.
I could follow up real quick. And I'm guessing because you're going to all the municipalities.
Yes.
That these dollars asking for Hinton will stay in Hinton.
Yes.
Initiatives here and then, yeah.
Yes. And I mean, that's why we go to every municipality. It's part of our strategic vision to be regionally focused, but to pay attention to the unique needs of our community. And Hinton is unique in the region, just like every other community is. And we're aware of that. And we know we pretty much know what Hinton needs that's different from everybody else.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, or any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing nothing further from council. Very much. Ms.
That
Mel.
was easy. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too. Thank you. That brings us to our third delegation presentation for today. That is item 5.3, Hinton Youth Advisory Council. All right, if you guys just want to introduce yourselves and take it away whenever you're ready.
Hi, and thank you for having us here today. My name is Leah, Councillor Leah, and this is Councillor Hayden and Councillor Brett.
Sorry, council. No worries.
So we are the Hinton Youth Advisory Council. This term, our members consist of Cadence Ragiani, Jada Orr, Hayden Amandrood, Sterling Moselle, Leah Cornwallis, and Brett Cornwallis.
This term, our main project as a council was coordinating a mural painting youth art night. We were involved in the design process, the budgeting and supply process, and the planning initiative. The mural we helped create is presented on the windows of the train at the museum. We allocated about $920 to fund this project.
We had Wendy sorry if I'm pronouncing these wrong, Wendy Willis and Lisa Brett came to our council meeting and provided information involving volunteer opportunities to the youth council for us. And then we also had Jordan Panasek came to introduce himself to the council.
This term, we have worked on many other smaller projects. These have included we advised Dawn Engerdahl and Heather Way on designs and themes for possible silhouettes, you know, the silhouettes that you see on your way up the underpass and such. We advised on new designs for those. We also debated on what to name the street sweeper outside right now. And we decided on Rocky. Yeah. Yeah, those are some of the smaller projects that we worked on during the term.
This term, we participated in many fun mock debates. These debates serve to improve our debate skills and provide comic relief to our council meetings. They got us more involved in learning how to properly debate using Robert's rules. And some of the debates that we did and the answers we got was, should Santa pay his elves minimum wage? We said should pay. Should French fries always be eaten with ketchup? We said no. Should a town-wide school uniform be enforced? We said a hard no. Should what's the new one?
We also had another one that we did was, should werewolves be regulated in Hinton? We actually didn't really come up with a what's it called? A solution to that one because we needed more information from the council. And then
for one of these debates, when asked whether or not superheroes should pay for the damages they caused, the number we were given was $14 million worth. We decided that instead of making superheroes pay for the damage they caused, we would introduce a tax increase to pay for the damages caused by these superheroes. So that was our decision. I'd love to hear your opinions on it.
we're asking if you guys want to talk about, like, if we what's it called, if you guys have any opinions about how we should have a tax increase, or do you think superheroes should pay for the costs that they did? We're just wondering your guys' opinion on it.
All right, thank you for that. So council, we've got the floor open to us for some feedback. Council, are there any thoughts or comments on whether superheroes should be responsible for paying for the damage that they caused?
Or they should pay taxes. People should pay taxes.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. The recommendation from the Youth Advisory Council is that that's funded through taxation increase. So council, are there any thoughts or comments? Councillor Taylor.
That was 13 million.
14 million.
Oh, well, you see, the trouble is that 1% tax increase is $130,000. When you divide that by 14 million, you get a number so big that if we did it, none of us would be reelected. So if you wanted us to vote on it, it'd probably be a hard no.
So
At least at this end of the council.
So you think you should get superheroes to pay their taxes?
I don't know who should pay it, but the taxpayers is probably not a good idea. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know, are there any grant opportunities out there to help these people out?
We didn't get any, what's it called? We haven't actually, we didn't really debate on any grants, but we didn't really receive any information about any grants received. Maybe in the future, we possibly could get grants. We don't really know.
Oh, okay, okay. But you are pursuing that avenue? You are. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Race. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, no, I very much echo the same thoughts as my colleagues at that end of the table. I think the only thing I would build onto that is, in the meantime, they're such an elite group. It's a user pay system. you caused the damage, we're gonna direct bill you, and that's really the only way we can go about doing this. If you don't want to pay, then you just can't be a superhero. Maybe have to license them. So there we go.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
That may be true, but I'm a little bit worried of whatever the superheroes are protecting us from. If they leave our community, we're left on our own, and usually superheroes are needed against those whatever foes that attack us. So I'm not sure yet where I stand on the taxes, but I don't want to lose them either. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. As for myself, I think that's definitely a difficult subject to get at. As Councillor Haas said, if the superheroes don't feel that they're supported when they are fighting crime in our community, they might just decide, well, you guys are on your own. We're out of here. We're going to Edson because they don't make us pay the bills. So I think maybe a good strategy would be to lobby the insurance industry to ensure that superhero damage insurance is available to citizens and businesses in our community. And then that way it's not the taxpayers that are footing the bill, and it's not the superheroes who are doing their best to help either. So just some thoughts from council. We do only have a few more minutes, and we want to make sure there's time for questions. So if you guys want to carry on with your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Each term, Hayek, our councillors have to participate in volunteer opportunities to get engaged in the community in our town and our community. Each of our councillors in our community, in our little group, has to be we have to complete 10 or more volunteer hours so that we can receive our bursary at the end of the year. Some of the volunteer opportunities is dance, is the community dance, food bank, Wild Mountain Music Festival, mud run, etc.
First off, I want to thank the HYAC administration for helping us exist and get this far in the first place. And I'd also like to introduce the members of administration. So for Councillor Joanne Race is one of our council representatives, as well as Councillor Trevor Haas, also a councillor representative. Amanda Jaworski is a GYPSD teacher. James Everett is the youth center representation on administration. Margaret Schultz is the museum representation, and Tori Gunya is the FCSS representation.
This is everywhere that you can find us and all the websites.
This is our year-end pictures. This is what we accomplished in the year. So you can see our train cars, our little sign things that go on the road. We have lots of those. We were wondering if you guys have any questions for us.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much for your presentation today.
Thank you again for inviting us here. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for your presentation. Council, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have some comments. First off, I want to tell you it was a pleasure meeting you guys, working with you. I found your spark. One of you loves to swim. One of you loves hockey and basketball. Another one loves math, and so do I, and drawing and painting. Because of Brett, I know what icing is now. Never knew what it was, and now I know what it is. But you took the time to tell me, and that meant a lot. Another thing, I don't know if you guys realize the legacy that you're leaving behind. 10 years from now, if that rail car is still sitting at the museum, those paintings are because of you. That street sweeper named Rocky, that's because of you. The silhouettes, 10, 20 years from now, when you're driving through town with your kids, you can say, I was responsible for that. So you've left an impact. One more thing is, as funny as those action items or those debating sessions may have seemed, I sat there and I'm going, oh my God, I can't believe the motions that were put forward, the questions that you guys asked about French fries. Like, who would think to ask that question about a French fry? But you guys did. So I got to tell you, I'm very proud and very happy to serve on that committee. So thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You folks are really lucky. I mean, you've had a really good experience, and believe it or not, you can extend this and you can take this into wherever you go out of high school, right? Whether you enter the world of work, there's lots of young people trying to go out for local municipal council and municipal government, other orders of government. But if you go into trades training or you go to university or any other kind of post-secondary institution, there's student government where you can get involved and have an impact in whatever's important to you in that world. So I mean, take what you've learned here and experienced and, you know, bring that to wherever you go. And I mean, that's a really great opportunity that not everybody else in your age group and cohort has that. So good for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, just to be brief, again, thank you guys for the presentation and showing to us in the community what you've accomplished in only, I think we have 8 meetings. It's a short term, you know, with being having to then recruit new members. But yeah, I want to just say your debating skills and the ability to be able to advise council on some matters. I really appreciate that administration brought some of these topics to our council, to our youth council, for them to debate and discuss, you know, the silhouettes and the naming. And I know that there are future projects as well that the next council will also be taking a look at as well. So you guys did a great job this year and showed a lot of skill, and look forward to hopefully you're with us again, some of you, and some new too, because I understand we have quite a few applying. So that's great to hear. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, I do want to express my appreciation for the work that you guys have done as well. Thank you for stepping forward and putting your names in for this. And specifically, I would like to thank you guys for the work that you did on helping to select the metal silhouettes. I'm very excited to see those come up, and I was really thankful of the designs that were selected ultimately to be the ones that are going to display and show off Hinton. So thank you, councillors. Okay, good.
Thanks again for having us.
Thank you.
Problem. That brings us to our first action item for the evening, item 6.1, affordable housing request for additional funds to administration.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this one over to Mr. McLaughlin.
Okay, thank you, Council. So we reviewed this at committee just to go over the highlights. The affordable housing project did do an open house. I think the new facility was well received by the community, and the comments were overall positive. We have people moving into the units, and I think they'll serve the community very well. But we do have to finish the project, and as we discussed, Evergreens, who will be looking after the buildings and managing them, had a few requests for additional items, as well as there's currently a overage on the project in terms of the expenditures. And so, having reviewed it at committee, we have drafted a recommended action based on council's comments from that night, and I look forward to any questions.
Great. Thank you for that, Mr. McLaughlin. Council, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I have some new information on this. This is why I bring it up again. I still have concerns about the project management. leading to the cost overruns on this project. And bring up the question again about recovering some of the $180,000 for engineering and project management fees for the following reasons. One, we were told the issue of the Fortis power line was unforeseen. Yet this was brought up on July 29th, 2022 in a pre-site meeting, and everybody knew about it. Even Fortis was at that meeting. So it certainly was foreseen before construction started, yet it wasn't addressed and it seemed to add to the project costs. Two, the town now has a 30,000 unused manhole barrel and ladder, which is sitting unused in our backyard, and presumably the project paid for it. Three, the contractors bid on a 8-inch water line, yet they had to tie into a 10-inch pipe on site, which was only discovered when digging started. This resulted in extra costs. 4, pilings for the last units were drilled in when the ground was really cold. Why weren't the pilings drilled in spring when the deep services were put in? This could have avoided the extra costs of digging around the piling. 5, Collier was hired on as the prime contractor, yet I'm being told they didn't show up on site very much, which seems odd. Because they would have been responsible for some of the deep services, I assume. So we paid $180,000 for engineering and project management fees. Does administration think we received $180,000 worth of project management services? And who's going to pay for these errors? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So there were some specific questions in there, was there not? You're looking for response from administration?
Well, I think it's the overall question, like the 180,000 for project management services. Did not the project management services that we paid for cover the oversight of this work?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. To administration.
We didn't have extra costs in terms of the project management. That wasn't one of the areas that we were over. As we discussed in committee, I think a large number of these things encountered when we entered into direct contract with local suppliers, and we had multiple contracts with the town instead of one overarching contract. I think that did add to it. Yes, we had a different pipe size when we dug down, and that did have to add to the cost, and resulted in some redesign, and we had to order a different manhole to make it fit in the site. I think I did explain to committee that had the pilings been put in after the site grading, we could have reduced costs substantially. So we did talk about that one. So yeah, we certainly acknowledge some of those things as contributing to the extra cost. But I don't think that we can point blame specifically at the engineering fees or at the engineering companies. And the cost to move the Fortis line wasn't caused by the engineering firms. It wasn't in the original cost estimate, so it was an additional cost. But even had we knew it up front, there would be no way of having minimized that cost. We still would have had to pay Fortis either way to move that line.
So no opportunity to recover. What was Collier paid for, if I could? They were a prime contractor on that's what they bid. They tendered out as the prime contractor. Would they not have overseen deep services? And there were,
I don't believe they were prime contractor.
well, that's what some of the documents I read said.
Okay. Administration.
Well, we had multiple contracts directly with people. I would say the overall main contractor was Noble, who we had a direct contract with. Collier's was hired for project management. They helped administer all the grant stuff. They coordinated weekly meetings every week for the duration of the project. Yeah, they helped in a number of support manners. They tracked all deficiencies. They also had additional burdens in trying to manage, again, multiple contracts and multiple contractors. And we didn't see increases in fees with that added complexity.
Okay, you good, Councillor Taylor? Okay. Councillor Haas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I guess no comment or a comment more than a question, but this was a project that quite frankly, we were given a very short timeline. And it was a council decision to move forward with this project, and knowing that there was such tight timelines. And I mean, granted, I share some of the, wondering if some of the things could have been avoided. However, on a project such as that, having a $53,000 overage, I think, despite the larger costs, I think is well worth it, especially with, we've already got the units full or close to it anyway. And the additional things are things that are asked that were not part of the project, whether it be the lighting, and the plugs and things of that nature. So, I don't disagree with some of the concerns. I do, I guess, have a question as to, because I'm not familiar with anything that Councillor Taylor mentioned. It was never a part of a report, so I'm not sure where that information is coming from. Typically it'd be nice to have that shared information for all of council to ask those questions, I guess, is my other concern, because I'm not sure where they came from. But based on that, I would like to move that the recommended action, or the direct or motion, the council approves the additional $128,000 for the completion of the affordable housing project, which includes a current project cover overage of $53,000, the power plugs of $30,000, fencing $20,000, and lighting of $25,000. And if I can just speak to it real quickly, we went into detail with each one of these additional projects in the committee meeting and found, I thought, to be valid. We've got winter months. We need vehicles plugged in. I see a number of vehicles parked there already, so they will need that. The fencing for some security and the light for safety were the big ones, and of course that overage. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Haas. Council, we do now have a motion before us. Councillor Magoon?
Just really a question both for myself and for the general public. The report identifies that the MSI is the recommended source of fundings in applying for it. Again, just for myself, because I'm trying to remember, the MSI grant process, is it a 100% recoup on the cost, or is it a shared split between the town and the source of funding? And I apologize if that was at committee. I just need that reminder before I vote.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. To administration.
Through the chair to the rest of council, MSI would be 100% covered by that allocation or allocated grant.
May I speak to the motion then, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yeah, for myself, then understanding that it's 100% through that granting process. And also understanding that a number of these points are simply additional asks to make the development more viable and livable. I'm certainly willing to support it. And in this case, I think an overage of, as Councillor Haas mentioned, $53,000 on the entire scale of the project. I think that's, as unfortunate as it is, that is the reality of the construction world, is that you are, you're going to have overages, whether or not you like it. Again, I would much rather not. I'd rather we see efficiency in these sorts of build outs. But ultimately it's not unexpected. So in this case, if we're looking to recoup that cost through the grant process, I actually think that's quite reasonable, and trying to seek a different avenue of paying it than simply burdening the town as a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Taylor?
This money's coming from the MSI funding, I gather. That funding could be used for any variety of projects, not just this one, correct?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. To administration.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Follow up, Councillor
did.
Taylor?
That being the case, I'm reluctant to vote for this motion being so close to the budget time. We don't know what we face at budget time, and I'd like to have as many options available to us at that time, at budget time, to make decisions. Unless the town manager could maybe tell us right now that we're only going to face a 1 or 3% tax increase at budget time, but I don't think he could. So I want those kind of options available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To administration, do we have about 1.3 million in our MSI right now? In
Yes.
around there?
To administration.
Through the chair to the rest of council, I was looking for our director of corporate services. She isn't here today, but I can certainly follow up with that answer.
And one more, sir. I will be supporting this motion. We talked about this at great length at committee meeting last week. I would like to see this move forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess just a quick question to administration. If we were to delay this, the intent is to complete all these projects before, I'm guessing, the snow flies, to get it all up and situated. So if we were to delay and wait for budget season, would we miss that window potentially?
Through the chair to council, yes, we would miss that opportunity. It is the intent to try and get as much of this done as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon.
Thanks. Actually, to build off of that question for administration, I suppose a different spin on that question is there anything that has to occur prior to this potential end of the construction season before the snow flies that is an absolute non-negotiable? If we're going to do this, it has to be done now. It couldn't wait until, say, after the budget season, because I don't disagree with the thought that Councillor Taylor brings forward with consideration of future spending. So I would like to know if this is one of those we can just hold off on it, make a fully informed choice before we go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Administration.
Through the chair to council, well, the overage money is essentially spent. And then the power plugs would be the one that I would consider that would be tough for the residents to live with through the winter if we didn't get that done. The rest of the items that would be council's discretion, but it would be my feeling that the power plugs would be a pretty main item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'd like to remind council that the last package we had on this administration gave us as one of the 2, possibly 3 options. So at that time, they thought it was a realistic option that council postpone decision or discussion on additional capital funds for these tiny homes until budget time. So that was one of the options that was presented to us in the past by this administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question is these things do need to be done. And if we took a different direction during our budget deliberations and say, take it from something different than MSI, that's still our obligation, or it's still a possibility we can do it. We're just saying we're going to fulfill this at this moment through MSI, but through the budget process, we may find other ways in doing it. Is that still a possibility through those deliberations?
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Administration.
Through the chair to members of council, I don't believe, because this is primarily grant funded, I don't know if there's more opportunity for additional grant funds. I think we have the project that was funded vast majority through that grant program, the rest of it being supported by MSI. I believe that the intent for budget season would be to come forward with these additional items if we did want to wait till budget and bring these as a part of a capital project plan on any additional items that council would like to consider at that time.
Thank you.
Just a quick, yeah, if I may, on the direct motion. The fact that we haven't indicated where the money comes from, like from MSI, does that make any difference? That we could then consider that in other, because we're not saying where it's coming from, we're just saying an additional, for the project.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Administration.
Through the chair to members of council, we can certainly include that into the motion if council's more comfortable with that. Alternatively, if council would like it to come from another funding source, we can certainly include that. But the intent is to make that application through MSI for this part of the project. I believe similar to what we did for the other aspects of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Haas. Did you want to propose an amendment or?
No, I'm not going to propose. I'm going to leave it as it is and I'm going to still support it. I made it. I'm going to support it. This project needs to be completed. And these are items that we talked over in length. So I'm still just going to support it as is. And it'll be funded through that MSI. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon.
Just a question for administration, specifically to the current overage. As administration had mentioned, it's essentially, it's been spent. It's part of an overage. If council wasn't to approve this evening, then my assumption is that those funds have to have an identified source moving forward. Can you confirm that for me, please?
To administration.
Through the chair to members of council. So the 53 would be going through MSI. We brought that forward just as a matter of transparency for everything. But that is a legally incurred bill for the municipality, and it will have to be paid. And the intent for that 53 is to come from MSI as well. But we did want to bring it forward to make sure that it was as transparent as possible for council and the community.
Thank you. Councillor Magoon, did you have a follow-up?
I have a couple actually, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if it would be seen as a friendly amendment if we could just get clarification for the current motion that it indicates that the source of funding is the MSI funding. And then I have a follow-up, but I'll just sort of start there.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Haas, there's a request for a friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. When I look at the report, it indicates the source of funds from the MSI, so I have no problem with it indicating it in the motion. So thank you, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. So 1 second. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Since we've just started discussion on this amendment is owned by all of council. If there's any changes to that amendment, it has to be done through a vote. That's Robert's Rules of Order.
There's a request for a friendly amendment, which Councillor Haas could accept. You can.
There's no such thing as a friendly amendment. Once it's been up for discussion.
Yep, that's fine. That's no problem. Yeah, there's opposition to it being a friendly amendment. That's fine. We'll have to.
It's not opposition to a friendly amendment.
Okay, we can, yeah, that's fine. So there's been so how would you like me to express that then? We've done friendly amendments throughout the history of this council, previous councils. If there's been no opposition from council, it's just been a change to the motion that's put forward. So if I can't say that you're in opposition to it being put forward as a friendly amendment, how do you want me to put this in front of council?
You could seek consensus and ask all of council if they're okay with this change, and then we vote on whether to proceed with the change.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion.
My pleasure.
As chair, what I'm ruling is that the friendly amendment is not being added to the motion because there's been opposition expressed from council. If somebody wants to make a formal amendment to include it, then we can address that and council can vote on it. So to administration, there's been opposition presented to the friendly amendment being added to the motion. So please do not add it. If there's appetite to formalize an amendment, then we would accept a motion to amend from council. Councillor Magoon, I believe you still had the floor. Councillor Magoon.
I don't want to formalize a motion per se, because I'd like maybe council's input, because what I'd like to propose is non-debatable, but I want to not make it clunky or complicate things that don't need to be complicated. For myself, there are parts of this motion that I very easily can support, the overage coming from MSI and certainly the plugins. Again, I'm wondering about if there's value in potentially separating this out. Again, I don't want to make that motion because once it's hit the floor, then I can't take it back. So again, if council can weigh in on their thoughts, if there's any value to that, and if not, I'll see whether or not it's worth pursuing.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, are there any other thoughts or comments before the motion is called to question? CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide a little bit of additional information, except for specifically provided elsewhere in our procedural bylaw, after a motion has been made, a member may, with the consent of council, change the wording of the motion or agree to change the proposed motion by another member if the change does not alter the intention of the motion. So with the consent of council, we can make that change. But again, with the opposition, it would go to a vote.
So thank you for that clarification, CEO Panasic, and that highlights how friendly amendment suggestions are handled in the past. But in this case, since there was opposition voiced, the friendly amendment was not included. Thank you. So council, are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say at last week's committee meeting, we discussed this at great lengths. We tore it apart. We took out things that we felt we're not going to pay. It says on page 42 of 69 that MSI funding is going to be sought. We know we have money in our MSI little account. So I'd like to move this one forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. And with no one else in queue, I would like to speak to the motion before it gets called to question. An overage of $53,000 on a project of this magnitude with the compressed timelines, I don't think is unreasonable. I do have a bit of a concern though in that in discussing this with administration, there were significant learnings that came from this due to the tight timelines that were enforced by the grant committee. So my question for administration is there an opportunity to provide feedback to the granting body regarding some of the challenges that were faced in moving this project to completion so that they can perhaps provide some future flexibility or streamlining or something to make it a little bit easier to accommodate the timelines and the restrictions while still being able to do full and proper diligence before the project completion?
Through the chair to members of council, yes, there certainly is. And typically as a part of our reporting procedure, if there are, if there is additional commentary to go along with that on our feelings on either timelines or any other what we believe might be unnecessary restrictions on the grant, we can certainly make that then with the granting body. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm happy to hear that there's potentially going to be some feedback to the granting body about the challenges that were faced. That said, though, the intent of the grant, it's called a rapid housing initiative. The point of it being rapid to get these houses to availability in a timeline where it's actually going to help the people that are needing it right now. For that reason, I understand why a project of this magnitude could go over budget and then a couple things could get missed, like power plugs and fencing. For that reason, I support the motion that's put before us, and I look forward to seeing this project brought to completion. If there is nothing else from council, we would like to call to question, please. We could see the motion. The motion that council approves an additional $128,000 for the completion of affordable housing project, which includes the current project overage $53,000, power plugs $30,000, fencing $20,000, and lighting $25,000. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is carried 4-1 with Councillor Taylor voting against. Council, is there anything further before we move on? Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, the one thing I learned about this whole process that we just went through is if we get a grant and we're looking at it and it has parameters or things that we cannot meet, there are times we're going to have to say no. We're going to have to say no because it's going to end up costing us money. It's going to end up costing us quality of work. So it's okay to say no. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, just before we move on, then I was content to move on, but having heard that, I do want to respond, though. I actually want to commend administration on the work that they did in complying with those timelines and considering how tight they were and that they were able to bring this project to completion. And from what I've seen of the project, I don't actually feel that there were any deficiencies in workmanship or quality of finish. I think those are some very nice and again, I don't want to call them tiny homes because they're not tiny. Some very nice living accommodations for some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. I appreciate that they're here and that they're available in our community. And I want to take one more opportunity to thank administration for making sure that they did come to completion and within the required timelines per the grant. So thank you for that. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. You guys, I did not mean that as a slam at all. Those tiny homes, I've been in them. I've seen the tiny homes without furniture. I've seen them where they've been, staged with furniture. They're doing what they're supposed to do. I'm just saying, next time I look at a grant that comes to us, I'll really be looking at it. But please, if I've offended anybody, I apologize. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for that, Councillor Race. So that does bring us to our next action item, item 6.2, FCSS level of service policy CS 7202 to administration.
Thank you, Chair. I will turn this one over to Ms. Juke and Ms. Bouchard.
Thank you. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. The draft FCSS level of service policy CS 7202 is before each company tonight with additional data requested on September 25th. This supplemental information is summarized in the RFD and details are provided in attachment 3, which is titled the 2022 FCSS user stats and net cost per user. Attachment 3 also breaks out the user statistics into each of the program areas, which can be cross-referenced with attachment 1, which is the description of those program areas, all the programs. So attachment 3 data shows the total number of clients served in 2022 by FCSS as just over 30,500 over the course of the year. I just want to follow the math up a little bit by saying that divided by the net cost of our municipal social services, that equates to a cost per client served of just under $14. And given the previously supplied research data, that $1 invested in prevention returns $12 saved on cure, that cost per client extrapolates out to $500,000 spent in helping Hinton citizens and increasing the level of well-being in our community, and saving Hinton $5.1 million in the costs of addressing social ills that then, as a consequence, did not happen. And I'll take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Juke. So to council then, are there any comments, questions, motions? Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, I'd like to ask administration to put forward a motion that I had informed them I'd be making.
Administration, do you have that motion?
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Your email stated that you wanted to put through you wanted to mirror Councillor Taylor's motion from last week.
Councillor Magoon, is that the motion that you're referring to?
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Is it okay to speak to it now while administration translates it?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. And I want to apologize to council for not being able to make Monday's meeting while I was doing other work stuff. So I appreciate your patience while I bring this forward. But again, at regular council is also the time to capture what the will of council is. And so now's as good a time as any. For myself, I keep thinking about one of our roles as council is to have as much information as we feel we need to make a good decision. And so for myself, there's a couple areas where I still need information in order to feel comfortable moving forward with a level of service discussion as it revolves around FCSS. And, you know, in consultation with other councillors, other members of the community, I'd really like to know comparatively where we stand with a number of other communities in terms of, you know, what variety of programs are offered, you know, what's the total cost comparative to overall budgets of other communities, because this is not an insubstantial amount of funding that we as a community spend. So I think it behooves us to take our time to make sure that we're ensuring that we're spending our funds wisely, because these are important programs. But ultimately, we have to balance that against judicious and wise spending. Again, I have no problem spending that kind of funding, but I'd like to do it once I have all the information in front of me. Now, I recognize in watching the video from last week is that is a report that is not a small process. It's not a small amount of work that we're asking administration to provide us with. But when I think about what I need as a councillor to feel good about a decision, it's information that I need and I'm requesting. In lieu of that, I'm certainly not able to support the recommended action this evening. Yeah, so I'll start there, let council weigh in, and we'll see how the motion goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, we do have a motion. And just for the record, Councillor Magoon, if you could read it out, if you wouldn't mind, just 1 second, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That council direct administration to compare the core and non-core funding program levels for FCSS type programs in Edson, Coaldale, Mornville, Whitecourt, Rocky Mountain House, Drayton Valley, and Westlock, along with a comparison of program delivery models and a comparison of individual programs.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate bringing it forward to regular. We had this conversation obviously during committee, but I have the same concerns. One is the amount of time that this is going to take. The second is I have the privilege of working in many communities with many different FCSSs, and the fact of comparing other FCSSs to other communities is extremely, I feel, very difficult, because every community has its unique needs. And every community surveys and gets information that their community needs. And being able to compare different communities is going to be, and a lot of times, apples to oranges. They don't have the same needs. They don't have the same issues necessarily that our community may face. We do have some commonalities amongst communities, but they're still different and the needs are unique. So I'm not sure, honestly, that will provide us any more information other than what our other communities' needs are versus what our needs are. And I don't foresee us at all changing our level of service to other people's needs, because these are our Hinton needs. So I strongly feel tasking administration for a 2-3 month project to do this, I just don't see the validity to it. We are shown through a lot of stats and through a lot of what programs specifically Hintonites are asking for. If there was different things that they do or need, they would ask for it, and they're constantly surveying our population for what is needed. And these are the services that they've asked for and are need to have that quality of life. So that's where I'm struggling with this. It's not the same as a lot of others. It's like us also comparing police services. There are different needs in different communities. They have different issues. So that's where I'm at with this. I feel comfortable with what it is. If the service levels, if we want to have difference, then we look at a budget time. That's when we can make that difference. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. I support your motion. I'm not well positioned to make a decision at this time as according to the recommended action here. And I think that a little bit of effort by administration, or a lot of effort by administration, to come up with information on a basically $500,000 over expenditure is an appropriate amount of effort, considering how much over core funding we are with this program, as we did last week. And I also think that the fact that there are some of our comparator communities might be doing things differently is very valuable to us to know, to understand. Like, they might be doing, we might be doing direct service with staff. They might be doing through nonprofits, or there could be a combination of different ways. There's all sorts of opportunities here to look and try to make this as efficient as we possibly can. It's not a matter about broad scale axing any programs. It's about taking a good look at this and trying to make the best choices with the limited tax dollars we have to go ahead. Thank you for your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To administration, could you, goodness, how do I say this? Can you, how long would it take for this comparison to come back? I remember you spoke to it last week.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Administration.
Through the chair, if I could, we have talked about that internally. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at that meeting, but I do believe 3 months is a fairly accurate timeline. I think we would have to, my interpretation of the information, I think 3 months would be a good one. I think this one would probably be a good candidate for a consultant, because that is you would have to be taking somebody out of their regular duties, and we typically aren't staffed at a baseline to have very much spare time in order to do these types of things. So I think this would be a good candidate. I've said before, but this one specifically will take a long time, because FCSS is such a unique program area where there's several programs. There's different funding sources for each of those programs. Certain volunteer organizations take on different parts of these programs in certain communities. So there's a lot of different nuances to all of these small programs, and FCSS programs in most communities offer a lot of different ones. So it is a lot of work. I would recommend that if we wanted to do an in-depth comparison, I think this would be a good candidate for setting aside some dollars in order to do that. But I would, if that would be the case, I'd want to talk to my staff and see their comfort level and come back at a future date. But I think the conversation is a good one of what level of information does council need to make an informed decision. And, we're here to provide adequate information. That never means perfect information, but adequate for council. So, we'd be willing to do that and come up with options on how we could get it done if that's council's wish.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Councillor Race, are you good? Did you have a follow-up?
No, I just have a couple other things, and then first off, I will.
Is it follow-up to this, or is it
Yes,
separate?
to this,
To your previous question?
to my question, and also to the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I will not be supporting this. I didn't support it last week, and I'm not supporting it this week. You know what? In the past, we asked for our policies to be updated. We've got some that are so old, it's just unreal how old they are. And FCSS taking the time, updated this policy, and I am so appreciative of that. Another thing I would like people to stop and think. I am thinking that a lot of municipalities hold our FCSS in very high regard because of the work that they do here and what we are able to do here. I am also very appreciative to, again, what you guys offer, Aids for Daily Living. You work with the elderly, you take care of people who are lonely. You take care of people who are new to our town. People don't, who don't speak English, people who don't know how to get to work. You get on the bus and you take them to where they have to go. So I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Just before I go to Councillor Magoon, I do have a question for administration. If council had an appetite to carry this motion, what would that mean in terms of preparing 2024 budget? What would it mean for the organization's ability to carry on functioning day to day, especially for FCSS?
Through the chair to members of council. So coming up to budget, we will see we will be budgeting for the services that we currently provide, because until we hear any different, but we will continue that. That doesn't mean that, decisions to add or subtract or to enhance or do whatever can't be made after the fact, but we do need to budget for the services that we have in place right now until further notice. So it would be business as usual until the decision is made on the levels of service by council.
Okay, thank you for that. So with the understanding then that a delay of at least 3 months and possibly longer wouldn't affect FCSS's abilities to continue to function day to day. I may be changing my opinion as to what I had previous when this was discussed prior. So thank you for that additional information. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it's really important with other policies and with other bylaws, we as a community look outward to other communities to find out what the best practices are. In this case, really, I think what the request is to look outward at what services and what it's costing other communities so that we have an idea, are we in the ballpark? Are we very, very high on the spectrum? Are we very, very low on the spectrum? Right? Because if we're not offering what other communities are offering, I'm great for having that discussion to bring us up. I feel like the reluctance to engage in that conversation is because people know that we do offer great service. There's nothing wrong with that, but let's be informed about that, right? Let's know where we stand in relation to other communities so that if we maintain that level of service, which is what the discussion is, it's because we actively choose to and know what the cost of that is. But again, I'm for having that conversation fully informed. And I feel like although it will take a little bit, that will allow us to go to the public and be able to justify where we're at, how much it's going to cost and why we think that's important. Not this is a hack and slash exercise. That's unfair. That's presupposing any future discussions. But as a councillor, I need information. I need to know where we stand in relation to our neighbors. So that's why I'm requesting this.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick, I guess, as administration, and I know councillors are also able to attend, but the FCSS board meets on a regular basis with all communities in all these areas plus more. Is that not the case to administration? And then I may have a follow-up.
Administration.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, to the rest of council. So yes, so the board meets every month. FCSS particularly doesn't meet, but we get the highlights. Yeah.
So in those conversations, though, is that part of what you do as administration to what are other communities and what other services are being offered, understanding that financially, and then looking at that, whether our community might need new things as well. And for councillors that want that information, is there a place that they can go that we don't have to spend 3 months at trying to take a look at what other communities and what other services or what they provide to have a better understanding of that? It doesn't require such a long process.
Through the chair to the rest of the council, I don't think there's an easy answer to that, just because all of the FCSSs in our region are so different. Like we were saying in committee last week. For example, Edson does a mix of indirect. They're going more so the direction of direct programming because that's what they're finding that they're reaching the needs of the community best. It again is kind of indicative of what the needs of the community is. Each FCSS is Jasper, for example, is actually not Jasper FCSS, it's Jasper costs. They have FCSS funding in their programming, but it's not Jasper FCSS. So they have probably 5 to 6 funding streams that they deliver their programming from. So it's different in every community, specifically our region.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last time I promised, but looking to add, one of the things I've heard from my fellow councillors in terms of concerns about why they might not support this is the workload that this would put onto administration. And I'm very sensitive to that. I'm very, very hyper aware that this is not a small ask. So when the CAO had mentioned that there would be a potential of discussing this as something that a contractor could deliver on, I would fully support that. Not only because it's very, we're cognizant of the horsepower we have as an organization, but ultimately what the citizens will see through that process is that you're talking about a third party delivering a report on what we do versus what other communities would do. I'm very happy to support a motion in terms of, looking for a contractor and having to pay for that. Again, the council needs to own that, right? If we're going to spend money to make good decisions, I'm okay with that. So again, for the rest of my fellow councillors who are maybe a little reluctant, that's something I would happily support.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. So question to administration then, if this motion did carry, what would be the process moving forward for how this would be conducted? And if it was through a consultant, would that be through this year's budget, or would that be through existing funding? If administration could speak to that.
Through the chair to members of council, that will be at the discretion of council as one. We can certainly bring that forward as a operational business case item for the 2024 budget, or alternatively, we can approve that in this year's budget, understanding that a portion of that is likely to carry over into 2024. But if we did that soon, we could have that by end of year. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. So in speaking to this particular motion, I am going to support this motion. I'm in hearing that the day-to-day operations of FCSS won't be affected by not having an adopted level of service policy for some period of time. I think that's okay, as long as the day-to-day operations are going to continue as is. I don't think I have a problem with either council or the public getting a better understanding of the services that FCSS provides and how that compares to other communities in our region. I think it's valuable information to have, and I do support the proposed motion. Council, are there any other comments or questions, proposed amendments before we call to question? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, then if we could see the motion, please. There is a motion before us that council direct administration to compare the core and non-core funding program levels for FCSS type programs in Edson, Coaldale, Morinville, Whitecourt, Rocky Mountain House, Drayton Valley, and Westlock, along with comparison of program delivery models and a comparison of individual programs. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is carried 3-2 with councillors Magoon, Taylor, and Ostashik voting for, and councillors Haas and Race voting against. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify through administration, a motion this evening to add to the 2024 budget deliberations, a level of service policy for FCSS be contracted. Would that be appropriate or required then just to confirm, because I'm okay, I'm great with it, but I don't want to see our staff doing it. I would prefer to see it a contracted service, and that would also give maybe some unbiased things as well. So is that appropriate to make at this meeting to add that?
Thank you for that, Councillor Haas. And I think that's important to inform the discussion amongst council on how quickly they want this done too. Is this a 2024 budget item, or is this something that's done by diverting some existing funding? So thank you for that, Councillor Haas. To administration.
So just a couple of points here. I'd like to talk about timelines, because one of the things we'll have to do is prepare an RFP, which is a document that has to define the scope and talk about the contract negotiations and the contract terms and conditions to some degree. Alone developing that might take us into November.
Yep.
And then we're out to RFP for a couple of weeks at least, let's say 3. Now we're into December. And so what I'm thinking is that it may be prudent to bring that forward as an operating business case for funding in 2024, because the expenditures will occur in 2024, not in 2023. Being that we're so near the end of the year. So we bring that one out.
And if I may.
Thank you for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to build off that, my intent is, that this is a 2024 service level, but that we're, as long as we're capturing it into this budget, into the 2024 budget, so that we're not taking from anywhere, and we've earmarked it for, or at least bring it to the discussion that we're going to be budgeting for a certain amount. So if it's the intent of administration to do that, I'm fine with that. But if it helps to have a council motion, I'm prepared to make the motion. I just need to make sure that administration has the wording that will fit.
Through the chair to members of council, yes, if that's a for operational business case item, my recommendation would be to make a motion to direct the comparative analysis for FCSS services to the 2024 budget process.
Okay, so if we can capture what CEO Panasic just suggested. Please.
Okay, we'll just give administration a minute to get that together.
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Haas, if you could have a look at that and let us know if that's in line with what you're thinking.
Yeah, if that includes whatever options that might look like, whether it's internally or externally, whatever, then that'll come forward. So yeah, that's what I wanted to capture. Thank you.
Okay, did you want to speak to it at all?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, just quickly to speak to it. I mean, it's important to council. It is important, to the community and to understand our level of service. I just, again, I think this is something we don't want to delay any further. Because it just puts that service level again, not being accepted at yet. So the sooner we can do this, the better, and understand it. And the fact is, as Councillor Stashik said, it's not going to affect the current FCSS programming until, after, and then even then it might, it's not going to affect it. It's just understand it better. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
I don't want to make assumptions. I don't want to make an assumption, but I am. I'm assuming that this comparison would include recommendations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to administration. Could you give a figure, a ballpark figure of what this contractor who's going to come in and do a comparative analysis might cost?
Thank you, Councillor Race. To administration.
through the chair to council, I don't want to put out a number at this point, just in the risking that I might be wrong or way off. But, I think it depends a lot about the scope. I think as a part of this OBC, I think a part of it that we'll need to learn from council with the budget process that's coming soon is to maybe further define what we're looking for as a part of that process. So depending on, we can go very, very deep, do a very deep dive, and it'll significantly change the cost, or it could be more of a surface level study, but the level of detail is going to be a big driver here. But I think until we can define that scope, I'd be hesitant to throw out a number.
Very good, Councillor Reese.
So council, I will not be supporting this. I look at this as something that's not necessary. There's going to be a cost associated with it. And also I look at this as we're putting our FCSS under a microscope. And what are we looking to see? Are we looking to see that we have the best FCSS in Alberta and they are top notch and everybody's holding us to a really high standard? Or are we looking to find out that, things are not as good as we like? So I will not support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, based on the past motion, I will be supporting this because I think the cost is much, much higher, tasking our current administration with all the other duties they have and services that they're providing. It may not be monetary, but it could be time and monetary, the combination. And having possibly a contractor come in and take a look at this takes that off of our current administration to do the day-to-day work and also build on whatever else projects they have going on. I do, however, have a quick question to administration about digging into, and I'm just wondering, is that digging into what that service level looks like instead of in the budget process, could that be more so in a committee meeting, just to understand a little bit better, possibly so that administration understands before they do the RFP, that we we look at, we want to fund this, but then how deep we go, because I just see that, the budget meeting is that the place to do it? I'm not questioning administration, but it might be quite a lengthy conversation of what our councillors kind of want and come to consensus to. So just a quick question, so that we make sure we capture in the RFP what council wants, because I don't want to we've done service levels before. I'm going to be honest, we didn't get exactly what we thought we were going to get. So this one to me needs to be what we want.
Thank you for that, Councillor Haas. To administration.
Yeah, through the chair, when I say service level review or comparative analysis, I think I have a very good picture of what council wants to know in order to make an informed decision on this matter, as I believe staff do. And, we can certainly have further conversation, but, I hope we have a very good pulse on what council would like to know in order to make that informed decision. So I think it can be hopefully a shorter conversation, but certainly if we miss the mark, we can certainly bring it back to committee for further discussion and refinement if that's the case.
Thank you, administration. For myself, I will be supporting this based on the motion that was just passed. There needs to be some mechanism in place for it to be able to get done. The reason I support this particular wording, I actually appreciate this wording in that it's broad enough. We've talked about a consultant doing this work, but this is broad enough that it's not binding us to using a consultant. There's an opportunity for a current or future staff member to be able to take this on. Maybe that's an option. And that goes back to what Councillor Taylor had asked earlier about whether this is going to be brought to us with options. So I see that as maybe some potential options. And then also to Councillor Haas's point that, maybe some of the options that come during the budget process are, hey, this is what you're going to get for 50,000. This is what you're going to get for 100,000. This is what you're going to get for 250,000. And that gives council some ideas of what kind of a in-depth dive we're going to get for estimated amount of expenditure, and it would help to make that decision. So just my thoughts, and I am going to support the proposed motion. Council, is there anything else? Any other comments or questions? Seeing nothing further from council, then if we could see the motion, please. There's a motion before us that council direct administration to include a comparative analysis of FCSS services in the 2024 budget process. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is carried 4-1 with Councillor Race voting against. Council, is there anything further on this matter before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing additional, then that'll take us to item 7, information items, 7.1 grant match to administration.
Thank you, Mayor. I will turn this one over to Ms. Juke.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through to the rest of council. I'll turn this one over to Recreation Administration Supervisor Heather Mark.
Thank you, Director Duke. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity. Administration has been seeking alternative streams of revenue prior to the budget season. The Parks, Recreation and Culture branch in particular, with operating requirements, is struggling to find the opportunities to explore grant opportunities that otherwise we know exist, or just to be able to prepare the information. And serendipitously, we came across the organization Grant Match that is described in the information report before you. We're eager to move forward with a contract for a 2-year trial term with this organization. I can answer any questions about the draft contract as it exists at this point in time. An alternative potentially would just be an FTE increase, or looking at different positions within Parks, Recreation and Culture. However, we note for our own projects, we anticipate there's a lower risk and also just a lower capital expenditure than we would see in infrastructure or in protective services. For that reason, we're proposing Parks, Recreation, Culture for the trial term. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mark. Council, are there any comments or questions? Motions, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the motion that council accept the report on the grant match grant procurement services for information. And if I can speak to it, this is great. This is, we've talked a lot about grants and internally, and I mean, it's not going to stop internally working on grants, but this, will improve. I see it, and it's all about, they make their money when they get the grant, and I really think that's the way to go. I mean, it's 10%, but that's a lot of work that's got to be put into it. And there's, from what I read in the report, a lot of understanding what our community's needs are and what grants are available. That's their work to look for them. You guys share. I guess I have one quick question though, and it kind of comes to some organizations that come forward. They were saying, because it's hard for not-for-profits to get that grant. Is there opportunities for this to also use this for maybe other, like, and I'm not going to say any specific names, but to support them in grants as well? Is there any opportunities for that, or is it specifically just for town projects?
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Administration.
Is my mic working?
Yep, you're on now.
Lovely, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Haas, thank you for the question. There is an assignment clause in the Appendix A to the contract. So therefore, agents, contractors of the town, they could foreseeably benefit from this organization. Typically, it operates like point of contact through point of contact, and then just articulating what the needs of the capital project are, and then seeing what is out there. Of course, it's in Grant Mat's interest to find as many opportunities as feasible for their baseline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
I'm not opposed to this, but my thinking goes somewhere along the lines of, how much did we get for grants last year? If we were to broaden the scope of this, $3 million. And if we had to pay 10% of that, that'd be $300,000 a year. That'd be a 2.5% to 3% extra increase for the taxpayers. When I see routine grants, federal and provincial government grants as a part of senior management's job, I expect them to be able to do it and to be in touch with those kind of grants. So that's my thinking along those lines. So if that's what this is for, I'm not in favor of it. But if it's for the non-routine grants that are outside the normal grant processes, and we're talking corporations or foundations, then I think this would be an excellent idea. That's my thinking on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Did you have a question at all or just commenting?
Just giving you my thinking.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I guess, a quick question when budgeting. Would we be budgeting this amount into the overall budget? Like we've got a project that's $200,000 and we're using a grant match that then our budgeting goes up a little bit to include that amount of money so that we're not then having $190,000 or whatever 10% of it is. Is that how it works? Or it's just they go for that grant of however much and then it's 10% of that?
Yep, now it is. Nope. 1 sec here, I'll get it. There you go.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Taylor. No, well, thank you for your comments, Councillor Taylor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Haas. So the strategy going into this budget season has not been to be overly optimistic, to assert that if we're going to be seeking any funding for these projects, that council should be behind them and really believe in those projects, and otherwise allocate the funding on the off chance that potentially there is no grant that is allocated, or also the slight risk, the contingency within this contract that if we were to approve grant match applying for a grant on a project and funding were allocated, we would be liable for the percentage at that level of funding, even if the plug, pardon me, were pulled on that project. So therefore, it's better to say, perhaps we will do our best to get grants, but otherwise this is what the cost of the project would be, which we would have to subsume into our capital if council had the appetite. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I have a time-lapsed question. When you said, Councillor Taylor, did you have a question? Now I thought of one. So thank you very much
No
for
problem.
offering that. It's just a bit of a lapse. Is that your intent on my previous comments? That this would be for the sort of non-routine government grants that we would apply for? Like corporations and foundations, and then Councillor Hawes's idea of opening it up for civic agencies would be wonderful if we could get that for that. Or is your plan to use it for getting money for any type of grant?
Through the chair and to Councillor Taylor, thank you for your question. The latter, so to apply for the grants that we would less likely see in conversations with senior leadership, it's not our intention. Should we come across a granting opportunity that would be hefty, perhaps superior to just allocate the internal resources and then not be sacrificing that 10 or 5% of the entire allocation? Does that answer your question, Councillor?
I think you said that it would be for the outside of the routine type of applications that are harder to find.
Indeed, for anything that's larger that would already be on our radar, there's a possibility our point of contact might come to us and say, hey, we would like to apply for this one, at which point we would give the consent about whether or not we hand over the project information. But otherwise, no, especially in Parks, Recreation and Culture during the trial term, we're not anticipating that we would see grants that would cover large portions of those projects anyways. It's just trying to find a contingency within our own operating at this point in time where we simply don't have the capacity with our FTE.
Thanks.
Thank you.
CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Chair. Just maybe to add a little bit to that, I've seen these types of programs be used as a tool, but they're selectively used and they're only when it strategically makes sense. I believe that staff typically do a better job because we have an in-depth knowledge of the community and, an in-depth knowledge of the project and the benefit that it could have. So, I think that we're not looking to outsource that service from administration, but there's also a lot of these fringe grants that are out there, and we really don't have the resources to, number one, identify every nook and cranny for these grants and to put in the resources to apply for them. And frankly, some the way some are structured, you could almost be looking at more staff resources or more time than the value of the grant with some of the restrictions that are in place. So, there's all sorts of different grants that would be strategic to go with this group, but it's a tool that we have in our back pocket. And, but we're certainly not outsourcing our responsibility or doing, I would say, the vast majority of, especially our big projects internally.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. For myself, I think this is a good idea. I support the motion that's been put forward. I did have a question though. What happens at the end of the 2-year trial period? Does this come back to council with a report and a request for decision, or how does administration foresee that happens?
Through the chair and to the chair to answer your question, the original draft contract had the article that this would just be an automatic renewal, and we had negotiated administration that be removed, that the contract merely terminates, we maintain the point of contact, and if there was satisfaction, we continue to move forward.
So I'm sorry, just to follow up then. So does that mean it comes back to council with a report on additional grants that we likely wouldn't have gotten, and there's the dollar value, and here's what we paid, and or how is that satisfaction guarantee or quantified to make a decision about whether the contract is continued or not?
At this stage, we had imagined, or through the chair, pardon me, we had imagined that council would become further aware on the success and how fruitful grant match is by coming back to council to say, council had approved this quantity for a project, and we now have a surplus because we acquired these grants through grant match. So an ongoing, almost kind of a notice that this is a success, or you don't hear about it at all over the course of 2 years because it was not successful. And then the contract is not renewed because there just wasn't a service provided.
Thank you. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. I think this is a super sophisticated tool for leveraging our bench strength and horsepower. When we start exploring projects and what grants are out there, as the CAO had indicated, there's certainly some nuance on when and should be applied. But I think it's smart. So thanks a lot for looking into it. I was really looking forward to seeing where it takes us over the next little while. So thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Taylor.
Could we open this up, this is on Councillor Haas's idea there. Could we open this up to our civic agencies and ask them, the recreation related ones, what some of their projects are, and then put it through this, and then we could get it managed through the civic agency agreements, and we'd get the grant, and they could run it through their civic agency agreements, so we don't have to administer the projects. Would something like that work?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Administration.
Through the chair and to Councillor Taylor, at this juncture, I do not foresee a reason why that would not be possible based off of the structure of the agreement that's been drafted between Grant Match and the town of Hinton. And indeed, Mr. Kreiner was quite eager to give me his card as a point of contact this evening to get in contact with Grant Match for that same reason.
Thank you. Council, are there any other comments or questions before we call the motion to question? Okay, seeing nothing from council, then if we could see the motion, please. There is a motion before us that council accept the report on the grant match grant procurement services for information. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Is there anything further on the grant match before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing, that takes us to correspondence, item 8.1, council information. Sorry, my apologies, Councillor Magoon.
Just confirming with the chair, are we looking for a motion to accept the correspondence for information?
I believe we are looking for a motion to accept, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to make that motion, Councillor Magoon?
Yes, so moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Council, we have a motion. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing no comments or questions from council, if we could see the motion, please. There is a motion that council accept the report for information. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Is there anything further on the correspondence before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing from council, then we'll move on to notices of motion. Item 9.1 Recreation Center, Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take much of the time, but I'm asking council to support this motion. Recreation has been on our slate, and many councils before us slate that discussing the future of recreation in our community. It started, it stalled, it started, it stalled. You know, and for various different reasons, you know, from whether it's changes in staff or COVID. But up to this point, the only action that really has been taken has been last council starting to put a reserve fund away to plan or for the future of recreation in our community. What I'm asking for, I spoke with administration, and the intent of administration was to bring this conversation to a council retreat. The council retreat has been adjusted somewhat. So it more than likely would not have come to us before the 2024 budget discussions. So what I'm asking the council, I understand from administrations, they are prepared to bring a detailed report on where the discussions have landed, what current motions are on the table, and it gives then an opportunity for council to have a conversation as to what the future might hold for recreation. And I'm not here to debate, you know, or suggest any changes. I just think that it's time that some council, and I want it to be this council, to really talk about that and start the action, the movement forward, potentially to increasing the recreation use in our community. So based on that, the report is already completed. It'd just be a matter of when that conversation would happen. And it may not be before our council budget workshop, but hopefully soon after, so we can consider some options for 2024. So thank you, council, and I'll take any questions, obviously, if you have any. So
thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we do have a motion before us. Did you read the motion? You didn't. I guess I didn't. No, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yeah. And my motion is to move to initiate the council initiate a comprehensive review and discussion on the future of recreation center before the 2024 budget discussions.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Haas. So over to council comments or questions of Councillor Magoon.
Actually, I have a clarification now that Councillor Haas has spoken it out loud. Councillor Haas, you didn't include direct administration. You actually said that council initiate a comprehensive review. And that actually, for me, that's a big difference. If please.
Councillor Haas, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I don't want I want administration to bring us a comprehensive review and report on the recreation center, and then for council to discuss.
May I speak to him, Mr. Chair? Yeah, please. So I guess my question is for administration. I actually had a really good discussion via text with a citizen today. They captured what I sort of was wondering about. I would like to see forward momentum. You know, in the past, you know, in the public realm, there's been discussion about, you know, studies and surveys and geotechnical, a lot of important work. You know, the unexciting work that needs to go into the background of looking into this kind of project. But I think for me, the real question is from your perspective in bringing this forward to the 2024 budgets with this motion on the table, do you see this as creating forward momentum for the project? Because that's what I want to see. I want to vote in favor of whatever it takes to see the next steps start to play out so that we can demonstrate to the community, this is not just something we're talking about. This is something we want to produce.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. To administration.
Through the chair to members of council, yes, that's our intent. First thing is to bring a good understanding of where this project has been, because there is quite an extensive history to the recreation center here in Hinton. But what work has been done, what information we have at our fingertips, and ultimately how council would like to move this file forward is our intent. As it was mentioned by Councillor Haas, we did intend on bringing that forward to a workshop. We do have one scheduled, and I think we'd be looking at fitting this discussion in, even if it's at least initially, and we could continue to have those conversations, because it is a big conversation. And so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, administration. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe CAO has touched on this, but I don't understand comprehensive review. What would they be reviewing?
So
Thank you.
Councillor Race, is that question to Councillor Haas or to administration?
To Councillor Haas.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to answer your question, this was in speaking to our CEO, is a comprehensive review of where we stand at this moment, understanding the history, understanding what current motions might be available or what are on the books right now, and having an understanding. And the intent is having that comprehensive review and then working on what then do we want to progress with. So, we just, as CEO said, there's a lot of history on this one, and we haven't talked about the recreation at all since our on this term. So we need to know where we're at, and then possibly, and I think if the CEO can also speak to, I believe in our conversation, talk to possibly to where we stand financially, understanding those things as well in that comprehensive review. So that's the intent, and the intent is to move it forward, is my intent for this motion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Race.
So that would be going back and taking a look at the conversations we were having the end of 2019 before COVID hit. Yes.
Whatever the history looks at, yeah, it'll be up to the whatever point it stopped, and then have that conversation moving forward and what this council would like to do with it. And if it's, say, leave it where it is and not do nothing or do anything, then that's the decision of council. But my intent is to look at forward momentum. So thank you.
And I have to say to you, I share your intent 100%. I think if there's a will, a desire, a need, and that is our focus, we're going to drive this thing home, but we have to stay on focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I don't mind your sentiments, like at least having a discussion on what we're going to do about it. Where I get concerned is when we, the budget discussions are already time compressed enough, and we've got so much to talk about. Here we're going to add a major topic right into the middle of the budget discussions, and golly gee whiz, last I looked, the package of information on this is like that deep. So, we're going to be, we did this after the budget discussions, if we're going to do it during the budget discussions, it should have something that's going to affect the budget. And that would be a more specific motion, like we want to increase the amount of money we're putting towards the rec center. We want to do a motion to look at the structural integrity of the mechanical condition of the pool or the ice plant or the Bill Thompson roof. Those would be practical things that I would see that we would do during the budget discussion. But just to do this during the budget discussion, my fear is that we would get bogged down and in a process that's already hard and complex. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying do either be specific or just do it after the budget discussions. That's my thinking a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, thanks. And really, I'll use that to address what I was going to discuss anyway. I'm going to support this motion that's on the floor again, because I think involving it in the 2024 budget discussions is important. Because obviously this is not a project. If we as a council are going to move it forward, then there's gotta, there has to come a point where we put our money where our mouth is, right? And if that's the will of council, and I use the word if because I don't want to presuppose anything. If that's a project that we're going to pursue, then the support has to be there, but there has to be a plan, which is why I wanted the CAO to elaborate, are we, would it be part of a forward momentum? Not just let's discuss it. Okay, well, we discussed it. What are we going to do about it? Right. And that's where I really feel like we have lost momentum over the last little while. Make the decision to pursue this or make the decision not to pursue this. But I personally, for myself, I'm at the point over my history with council where I'm ready to pursue this. If that's not where the rest of council is, I understand that. And that's fine. But I would like to see us move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's my same sentiments as we can delay it and delay it. Other things are going to come precedent. We've got there's a lot of growth happening in our community. And I think it's time that, our recreation needs to be improved and we need to have that discussion. The other thing that comes to mind I didn't mention is we also contracted our strategic director sitting in the back for a period of time. And I want to utilize that position as well for a project like this while we have that contracted person for that period of time. So I don't want to delay it any further, even if it's, we've got already money in reserves. Where do we want to go with the next steps to progress it? So I don't want to delay it after the 2024 because then it just gets lost again. So I have the same sentiments as Councillor Magoon. Let's talk about it and make a decision as a council what we want to do. So, and I'm of the, we've got some options and a lot of that information is dated. And I think that we've got new information to bring to the table as well for what options we may have for the recreation future. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Magoon.
Yeah, and I want to thank Councillor Haas for bringing up this motion. Without getting into the specifics, because it's not about the people, there were a couple of public comments made in recent weeks where it was stated that there was really no appetite of council or no support from council to move this project forward. And I actually strongly disagree with that. I would say that there was nothing that had hit council's agenda that council, had currently dealt with. Yep, that's a fair statement. But there was certainly nothing that council as a whole had said the collective will of council is not to support a rec center moving forward. That was sort of a flavor of a public comment that I wasn't in support of and I don't think was fair. And I want to appreciate the fact that Councillor Haas said, well, then let's make something public. Let's see what the appetite of council is to continue or not with this particular project. Again, it's a matter of putting your money where your mouth is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, is there any other comments or questions before we call the motion to question? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, if we could see the motion. My apologies, I'm not going to get it. I keep losing my Wi-Fi connection for some reason. I just need 1 second to reconnect. Okay, so that we do have a motion that council direct administration initiate a comprehensive review and discussion on the future of a recreation center before the 2024 budget discussions. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is carried 4-1 with Councillor Taylor voting against. Council, is there anything further on this item before we move on? Councillor Haas.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. So council is slated for an SLT and council retreat. It's the intent on October 14th, now that this motion is passed, to bring to start that conversation during that time, or is there another time we have to arrange?
Councillor Haas, administration.
Through the chair to Councillor Haas, yes, that is my intent. You know, if for some reason we're not able to get to that topic, we'll schedule it very soon after.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, anything further on the recreation center notice of motion? Okay, saying nothing, are there any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing nothing, then that brings us to sure. Did you have a question, Councillor Taylor?
Oh, yes. Well, I did put a notice of motion forward. Do I had to do for this meeting was just to get it in forward in writing. And I didn't have to and then it would get on the next regular meetings agenda.
Yep, that's correct. Through the chair, Councillor Stewart did provide a notice of motion to direct administration to bring forth the rural stream program for council for review. So that is a notice that has been submitted to administration for and will be on the agenda for the next regular council meeting.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I had to speak to that. I thought I'd done everything I had to.
So yeah, if I may, you don't speak to it today, but the process is that you do read the notice of motion into the minutes.
Great, thank you.
So that's why I was asking, and I knew you had put that request forward, so that's why I was asking if there was any additional notices. So if you do want to make that notice of motion, if you want to read it into the minutes, that would be great.
Right. I'd like to read that into the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor.
It's been 3 hours since I wrote it. So what did I write?
Through the mayor, to direct administration to bring forth the rural stream program for council to council for review.
Yes, I'd like to direct administration to bring forward the rural stream program for review.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So that will come forward as an action item on the October 17th agenda. Council, are there any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing nothing, that will bring us to council report, sorry. Item 10, reporting, 10.1 council reports. I'll start to my right, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I did attend the AUMA and I did have the opportunity to ask the Premier a question on what her plans to help us were with doctors and doctors' appointments. I expressed that that was a crisis. And I was pleased that she provided an answer that indicated that she had thought about it and the cabinet next week was going to talk about it. So that means it's a top of their mind, helping us. I also had an opportunity to talk to some or a lot of the cabinet ministers, including the Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy and a couple other ones about the Mondi project, just to make sure they knew about it. That's all I was doing. And I think it's important that some of those guys know that we're doing a $700 to $800 million project. And then a lot of good stuff attending some of the training courses. We went to the renewal, the Code Blue on the doctors, and we've got some recruiting ideas on how to recruit doctors for our town. So hopefully that'll help. And then we went to Todd Brandt's session on conducting meetings, and that was very useful. And then, of course, there's all the folks and connections you make with everybody that you see there, including my annual pilgrimage to the global photo radar booth, which I'm always pleased to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I too attended the AM convention with Councillor Taylor and our fire chief, Mac. I went to that convention armed with probably 100+ town of Hinton pins. And I took each one of those pins as an opportunity to go and talk to somebody from all over Alberta. We talked about council procedural bylaw, we talked about water issues, we talked about code of conduct, and we talked about the lovely communities that they lived in. So on Tuesday, Stuart and I attended effective meetings with Todd Brand. He's a parliamentarian. That guy is absolutely awesome. I would, in my opinion, every councillor should attend one of his sessions to learn about agendas, to learn about how to chair a meeting. You know, you come in to be a councillor and chances are you've never chaired a meeting in your life. So this person would give you a lot of good information to help you be a councillor. On day two, the first session that I attended was delivered by a criminologist. And he talked about causes of social disorder and evidence-based approval for prevention and resolution. Something that really hit me is he talked about a woman, or he spoke about a woman that he interviewed. And this is a woman who was living in a very violent situation at home. And he said, "Why are you there? Why are you staying?" And she said, "I know how to live as an abused person. I don't know how to be homeless." So she's staying in that environment to stay off the streets. And that really hit me. The other session that Stuart and I both attended was Code Blue. And we heard from the mayor from Cold Lake, we heard from Boyle, and we also heard from Summer Villages, what they are doing. They're not waiting for the government to step in, but they are doing to get doctors to their communities. There's 2 municipalities who are more than willing to come to Hinton and share their success stories and help us get along. So on day 3, we had the code of conduct session with a lawyer, and I'll tell you, that really opened my eyes up, what she was saying to us. Also on that day, we probably took care of 24 resolutions. Every resolution that was presented to us, all but one was carried. So it was a full day with resolutions. The first time ever at a AM convention, they had a session just for women in government. So it was quite packed, a lot of people there, a lot of women there sharing their stories as being a councillor or a CAO. And one more thing is we did have an opportunity to meet with a lot of ministers, and I'm not saying sit down in a room and talk to them about our issues, but to go up and actually introduce ourselves and let them know where we're from, any little concerns that we have. I found them all really just very genuine people, and they're all sporting a town of Hinton pin, which I think is very important. We've got to get our name out there to the government, get them knowing who we are. So that's it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reese. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the Hinton Rotary's Oktoberfest event. Again, it was fantastic. It was extremely well attended. It's just one of those keystone community events that I think it's really important for building that sense of community. So again, the one thing that is never lost on me is the amount of logistical work and behind the scenes work that goes into putting an event like that on. So I just want to say thank you, not only to the Rotary, but to their army of volunteers and also supporters, the business community and other individual supporters who, put not only their time and talent, but also their hard-earned dollars behind making sure that that goes on. So thank you very much. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing to report is I was able to attend our town's Truth and Reconciliation event. As we all know, Saturday was the actual day, but on Thursday, we had agreed as a council to offer an event to staff. So I was able to attend. It was really well done. I want to thank administration for the work they did behind that. It was we had a 14-minute video that was from a person that experienced residential schools and the impact it has. And it was her daughter that was doing the documentary with her mother. And then we had a very nice elder come in from Edmonton that spoke to us that was very he was funny, but also very informative and spoke to building relationships, as not pointing fingers of blame, but building relationships moving forward. So I just want to thank the administration for that and providing also lunch. So thank you. And that's all to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. For myself, I have nothing to report this week. So we'll move on to 10.2 Chief Administrative Officer Reporting and Status Report. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything to report this time.
Thank you. So council, we do have one closed session item that we need to deal with this evening. Oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor Taylor.
Manny, can I ask the CEO a question on his report?
Sure, go ahead.
Or non-report. Last little while, we've got Todd Brandt's detailed comments on the what's that thing called, the procedural manual. I was wondering, I think it's valuable that we send that on to everybody on council so they could see that. And are we going to wait till we get a mayor to proceed? Because I believe the members of that committee are the mayor and Councillor McGowan with me as a fill-in. Is that the plan there?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. CEO Panasic.
Through the deputy mayor to the rest of council, I would look to council on their preference on how to move forward, given the fact that, we're currently, we have 2 seats to fill. Certainly can send that information out to everybody. I think that's important, but if we would like to proceed prior, if not, we could wait until I believe that would be late November, early December to continue those discussions.
Okay, thank you. So council, then I guess, is that a matter that we want to discuss now and give some direction to administration and the committee? Or is that something we want to see come forward at a future committee of the whole meeting? So I do have a couple people in queue, but if we could just keep the discussion to that matter for the moment. Councillor McGowan.
I will speak to that then, Mr. Chair. I think for myself, I'd rather have a little bit of thought about that and maybe add that to a future committee of the whole meeting for myself, just on that question. And I'll put myself back in queue, but for a new line.
Okay. Council, is there anything else that anything we want to add to the question regarding moving forward with the procedure bylaw review? Councillor Haas.
Yeah, it's a very important document. Obviously, it's how we run business, but the fact that we are down to, I'd like to see a mayor in position have that complement, and then for that committee to then see the results of it and then bring the rest to council and keep it that way. So that's my preference, but it's again direction of council, but that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know what, having met Todd Brand and sitting in on one of his sessions, I think it's vital that we wait until we have a full complement of council. And another thing that I would like to add, in knowing that there's no motion on the floor, is it not just committee receive, when Todd comes and speaks, not just committee listens to him, that all of council who is available is able to get that report from him. That's so important. And I say that because I trust you guys as your interpretation of everything you hear. However, when you the committee take that information and bring it back to us. That's your interpretation of what Todd just said to you. I would like to hear it right from Todd. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. So having gone once around the table, people have thrown out some opinions, but we would probably best capture people's thoughts with some motions and directions of council. Does anyone want to put a motion forward? If not, we'll just move on. Okay, seeing nothing further from council then, Councillor Magoon, this is a different matter. Okay, go ahead.
No, just simply, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we move into closed session.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Magoon. Councillor's motion to move into closed session. If we could see that, please. I lost my Wi-Fi again. We'll just manually vote. All those in favor of moving into closed session? Councillor Taylor? Okay, and that's unanimous. We'll move into closed session with a 5-minute break. I don't know.